Hello, Trombone Internet. This is Chris Van Hoff, assistant to the regional manager of the International Trombone Festival. We at the festival, of course, are huge fans of the pod, and we are really excited to invite you to attend this year's 2024 International Trombone Festival at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave Begnosh is our host. We have the world premiere of a brand new double concerto for trombone and piano with the Fort Worth Symphony. We have the American Brass Quintet. We have late night jazz featuring a Latin jam session. Like, everything is happening. All the cast will be there. It's the best hang in the world, and we hope to see you there. You can register for the festival still online at www.internationaltrombonefestival.com, and it's happening the last week of May. So go register. We'll see you in Texas.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, we talk to Brian Hecht, bass trombonist of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. My name is Sebastian Vera, and I'm joined as always by Nick Schwartz. Happy, hopefully better New Year, Nicholas. And when the podcast comes out tomorrow, happy birthday!
Oh! I thought you forgot my birthday.
I would never forget.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to listening to a new retreat of the trombone, a new episode of the Trombone Retreat on my birthday.
And if I can say so myself, 21 never looks so good. And welcome to 2021, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're excited about a brand new year of podcasting and hopefully trombone playing. If you haven't subscribed yet to the podcast, please subscribe. Anywhere you download your podcast, you can find us basically everywhere.
You know, I've known Brian for a little bit here, but it was really nice to get to hear more of his story. He's a really great guy and obviously a spectacular bass trombonist.
Yeah, we grew up really close together and around the same age, had the same teacher, and had a fun time talking about that. But he's a real sensitive guy too, besides his amazing playing and how funny he is. I really enjoyed getting to know.
Yeah, I agree. Today's episode is brought to you by Houghton Horns, whose mission is to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of products, services, and resources to the brass playing community.
Check out their new YouTube channel that features our guest today, Brian Hecht, and some really awesome new videos that they just produced, performing on his Shires and Greg Black mouthpieces, which Houghton Horns specializes in offering.
Visit their website at houghtonhorns.com.
Enjoy the show. Oh, there he is.
What's
Whoa.
up, guys?
All right, Handsome has entered the chat. Yeah.
It's good to see you guys. How y'all doing?
Oh, he's so busy. Oh, my God.
Just gigging.
Just
Yeah,
came
exactly.
from a gig, about to go to one.
Exactly.
Couldn't even take the trombone out of the case. It's on the car.
If you asked me where my trombone was right now, I'd have to think about it. Like, what room is it in?
Mine's right here. Always, when I'm at the computer, it just brings me shame. Just looks at me.
See,
You haven't
Brian
touched
has
me in
his.
days.
You got a tenor and a bass behind. Is that a contra too? No, that's
I've
just
been
a
real
meter.
bored, guys. Yeah. No. Yeah. I got my tenor and my bass, and like what you can't see is I have like my tablet set up, and I just sit down here at night and watch movies, and I say I'm practicing. Like I'm in my chair next to my trombones, right? That counts.
This is Daddy's alone time.
Yeah.
He
Exactly.
goes down to the basement.
Exactly. 10 p.m. to midnight. That's daddy time.
Okay, this is a PG-13 podcast.
So what's up, dude?
Not much at all. Happy 2021. Definitely, glad to kick that 2020 year out of here. But really, honestly, not much. Just relaxing. Honestly, I'm thrilled to get to do this with you guys. I've followed y'all's Third Coast Retreat for so long. I sent a lot of my students go there and just like literally tell me that it's the best thing they've ever done.
Aw.
Like, it's amazing what you guys are doing up there, and I've been checking out y'all's podcast a lot. And thank you for having me on. Like, this is really, really cool.
Well, thanks for being on.
First guest of 2021. That's a lot of pressure.
Ooh, yeah. Why'd you do that to me? Shit.
I've just always wanted to say, how the Brian Hecht are you?
Oh,
I did
I
it.
have not heard that one before.
You haven't?
Really?
I definitely have.
Okay.
Actually, my band director like figured it out during a marching band rehearsal one day, and he was like, "Brian Hecht, get the Hecht off the field!" And like everybody thought it was hilarious, and I was like, "All right, it's done." And he's like, "No, really, get the Hecht off the field. You're in timeout or something. I was doing something wrong. I missed my dot."
You missed your dot. Oh, I know. Hey, if you're a marching band, you know, right?
Marching band in Texas. That's some serious stuff.
At least summers in Michigan are just like some of the most beautiful summers I've ever seen. Like,
they are nice.
my pops has a house up in I'm not gonna say it right, but Houghton Hancock.
Yeah, Houghton.
Yep, they've got a house. They're actually up there right now. I mean, it's not beautiful, right? I mean, it is beautiful in its own wintry way, but like I remember the summers up in Evanston were just like, I mean, growing up in Texas where they're miserable, it was just amazing. Beautiful skies and like 80 degrees every day.
Yep.
Like I wouldn't mind marching band out in that kind of weather.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right now it's not so awesome. I was telling Sebastian earlier, it snowed like a foot here, and then it rained, and so it's like it's pretty gnarly outside right now.
Slush.
Yeah, everything's ice right now.
So you call your granddad Pops?
No, that's my dad.
Oh, you call your dad Pops? That's so old fashioned. I love it.
Yeah, it's like it kind of developed like in my adulthood. I mean, I called him dad, right? Like as normal, my old childhood, whatever. And then like as I started getting older, I was like, well, now you're old as heck, so you're a Pops. So that's what he goes by now.
Hecht.
Hecht, yeah, dang it. Old as Hecht. Yeah.
I have a student with the last name Heck, and so I just pelt her with dad jokes consistently.
What the heck?
Pelt her with dad jokes. It really is a form of attacking, isn't it? A dad joke.
Oh yeah,
Have love.
can be if you use it correctly. Yeah.
Well, you're the only dad here, so
yeah, that's true.
You should tell us, Brian.
They're powerful things. The thing is, I can't tell you; they'll just sneak in, and you have to get that forced laughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you got to talk to Brian Santero. He's not a dad, but he's the king of the dad jokes.
Is he really?
Oh man, it's like at one point
aggressive.
When Ray Mace was still principal trumpet of the ballet, he pulled me aside and he said, "You got to get Brian to stop telling dad jokes."
He's just pelting you too much with them, huh?
Oh, he's constant in rehearsals and performances. He would just like little quips here and there, and Ray just like you could hear Ray just like groaning, like, "Oh my god." All right, let's dig into the story of Brian Hecht. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell us where you grew up, how you got into the trombone. Kind of just like walk us through the beginning stages of Brian Hecht.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I was grew up my whole life in Texas. I was born in Galveston, but I don't really remember
beautiful brown
too
waters
much.
of Galveston.
They're disgusting. Yes, heavenly. But they was born in Galveston, but I don't remember much of it because my parents moved whenever I was 2. So my first memories are in like actually Dallas proper. I had a house there and probably lived there from like when I was 2 until like 10. A little personal stories. My parents split up whenever I was 2, so I don't really actually remember my parents being together. So like most of my childhood life was just like me, my dad, and my brother, like this like trio. And I would still like see my mom like half the time as well, and she got remarried whenever I was around 4. So I've always grown up with like 2 families, and my mom's the creative side that always really supported like music in my life and just anything artistic and creative. She'd always like she was really big into like crafts and making stuff. So she's the one that sort of got my mind going on a lot of that stuff. And my dad's a cardiologist, and so he kind of supplied the other side of things of, the math and science driven life. He actually, like, whenever I was little, I was so eager. I have an older brother that was in school whenever I wasn't, and I was like 4, and he would still give me like math homework on construction paper with crayons. And so whenever I was in kindergarten, I was a bit of a troublemaker, as I guess younger siblings usually are. And so I would always end up in, they called it timeout at this elementary school, but whenever I was in gym class, which happened to be my favorite class because I could run around, I didn't get to participate because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And so I'd have to stand outside the gym behind the door and with like my nose in the corner, except for one day on a Thursday. I remember this, the piano teacher came by and she was like, hey, this is the time for piano. So anybody who wants to do piano class, come with me. And I was sitting in timeout and I kind of poked my head into the gym. I was like, does this mean I can get out of timeout? They're like, yeah, just go. go, go, go. So that's actually how my music training started, was getting me out of timeout in gym class. And every Thursday I knew that I could do whatever I wanted for the first 15 minutes of gym because I'd get out of timeout the moment the piano teacher rescued us.
Nice.
And so every Thursday I started in piano and ended up being like, I kind of just did it to, like I said, get out of things, but I ended up really liking it. It was exactly what I needed. Like, I wasn't really good at focusing in class, but like something about piano, I was like, wow, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And it sounds so cool. And everything the teacher played, I just remember being so beautiful that it was the only thing I was able to really focus and be driven about in school. And like, I remember piano class would go by so fast. And so that's sort of where it all started for me, was in kindergarten. I think I did it in first grade as well, but then I ended up moving schools and they didn't have a piano class. So I got a solid year or two of music education early on that kind of always stuck with me and taught me how to listen for music in things. Like when I was watching a movie, I would really pay attention to the score, and I always thought the music was really cool. And I remember like saying to my family, like, wow, did you hear that really cool spot? They're like, no, I was watching the movie. Like, what are you talking about? And it just kind of got my ear going on music. And that's where it all started, was in Dallas.
Seems like a common theme among bass trombonists that we've interviewed is that they have a lot of trouble focusing. And they
Wait, what'd you say? Were you in Dallas your whole upbringing?
Yeah, we went from city of Dallas out to Irving. It was kind of crazy. Like, my dad was in med school whenever I was like in kindergarten through first and second grade. And so we were in pretty rough parts because he wasn't making like any money. We were totally broke. Like, I remember breakfasts where like roaches would crawl up my leg and stuff. Like,
no.
Yeah, dude, it was a little traumatizing. And we even had this like vent, as most Texas houses do. It's like this fan in the ceiling that basically, pulls the hot air out of the house to the attic. And when we turn that on, like, just dead roaches would drop down.
Oh yeah.
Like, just start raining. And so I remember that. And then the moment my dad like finished med school and started getting a job, he got his first paycheck. He was like, holy cow, we can move out of this garbage house and actually, get something real nice. So he kind of went like nuts with it and got this like really nice house that he ended up like a year or two later was like, yeah, these mortgage payments suck. Let's downsize a little bit. But we moved into Las Colinas, like Irving
I lived
area.
in Las Colinas for a little bit growing up.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
We were there for like I said, like a year or two, and then like fifth grade we moved to Coppell and settled into the hoods of Coppell.
I can't imagine how difficult it would be. Yeah, hoods of Coppell, and we'll get to that. Yeah, a real rough area.
Isn't that where Zach Bond is from too?
Yeah.
Yeah, same high school, same teacher, everything. He was just 4 years ahead of me.
And I can't imagine how tough that must have been as a young single father going through med school and raising children that young. I mean,
yeah,
it's probably hard to think about during that time, but geez.
There were some interesting nights like where I remember he'd always have his pager on him back in the day of like pagers and stuff, right? He'd have his pager on him and it would go off in like the middle of the night, and he like, if we woke up, there would just be like a note by the phone like, hey, had to go to work, if you need me, like this is the hospital, the number for the hospital. I remember him teaching us how to like dial a phone.
Yeah.
In case, we needed him in the middle of the night, but it was just me and my brother a lot of nights whenever he was on call. But yeah, that had to have been tough, single dad trying to raise some little hellions.
But yeah, so we grew up in the same area. I think about like 15 minutes apart, something like that. I was in like Flower Mound, Highland Village, Louisville, and and we can go into it, but I mean, it's kind of something I don't think I realized until I kind of left the area, how lucky we were music education wise, and just the amount of resources we had and the level of teaching and the level of the programs and the facilities, and like even because so we had the same teacher, and I definitely want to talk about John Bowles, but like even visiting him the other day, like he's the private teacher for trombone there, and he has his own studio in the high school. There's a trombone choir that Coppell High School has. Like, it's a serious thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's, I think you, like what you said is like, it's so, you don't realize what you have when you have it with John. Like when you look back and like, I talk to other people about like the sort of trombone upbringing they have, or even the kids that I teach now, like in high school, it's like, do you guys do trombone choir? It felt like a trombone studio, right? It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I take lessons with this guy, you take lessons with that lady or whatever. It was like a unit, like we all hung out for one class every 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And even in high school, like we would do trombone choir after school was over, not during marching season, obviously. That would be blasphemy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, gosh, John creates such a great culture there that I was very fortunate to be able to grow up in the music, system of Coppell. Like, I remember even in elementary school, like before I started studying with John, like you had a music class that was just as long as your science class, your math class, whatever. Like you'd go to the choir room, you'd learn, solfege and recorder. Like we all got recorders that I'm sure my parents hated. My friends constantly tease me like with this image of a Frozen recorder and a little like songbook to Frozen. Like, we're gonna get this for your daughters because we hate you. But yeah, I remember practicing that, and actually my brother got to practice cello. That's one of my first musical memories in the house. Was my brother? He's 2 years older than me. He actually had to lug a cello back and forth from school to the house, and gosh, I can't believe they trusted a kid in 6th grade with a cello at that time. But he would give us little recitals in the living room, and I just remember thinking like, wow, that's so cool that you can just see those dots on a page and make, songs with it. And then he ended up playing trumpet, and he was like, I mean, I followed my older brother around everywhere. He played soccer, I played soccer. He picked number 21, I picked number 21. And then he like convinced the coach to give him 00, and my coach wouldn't do that, and so he finally got away from me a bit. But I copied him for everything. And so when he did band, I naturally did band. And that was like sort of the pickup of the story there is going, I had just like the group music education in elementary school, but whenever I got into middle school, like I was like, all right, yeah, my brother does band, so I'm going to do band.
And did you start studying with Mr. Bowles in middle school?
No, I actually, I didn't actually pick trombone at first. You could say trombone picked me.
Oh God.
I watched too many Disney stories. It's a cheesy story, but no, I remember.
Have you watched Soul yet?
Yes, that's really great, man.
Features a lot of trombone in it too.
Yeah,
Andy
Martin.
Yeah, he sounded great. I loved that.
Oh, it's
finally
Andy
the
Martin.
trombone got
Is that who it
used.
is?
It's Andy Martin.
Oh, I was trying to find out. Okay.
Yeah, I think Alex Isles threw up a confirmation of that, and like they didn't put Andy's name in the credit, but yeah, he did a killer job on that.
Yep.
I remember going into middle school band, and they were like, "All right, what instrument do you want to play?" And I was like, French horn, because I thought it looked real cool. Like all the loops and all the tubing. I was like, that just looks important.
Oh, you dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
Brian Hecht's always
awesome
been a
instrument,
sucker
so-
for loops.
I love the French horn, but
Shiny
damn,
thing.
it's hard.
Yeah. But I remember like my lips are just too big for it. They gave me the mouthpiece. I was like, and from afar, like, all right, the French horn looks awesome. But then you see that tiny little mouthpiece, and it's like, I can't work with this. Like my bottom lip barely fit in there. So that was never going to happen. And I was like, okay. They're like, well, what's next? And they have like this pamphlet with pictures. And of course, since Texas is marching band driven, it wasn't a tuba in there. It was a sousaphone.
Of course.
And so I was like, how about that thing? The picture, it's also loopy and big bell and cool. And they pointed to this massive thing on the wall. I was like, oh, that's what that is. Okay. And the mouthpiece literally like covered my nose and my mouth. And so that didn't really work. And so I was like, all right, fine. Cool kids play percussion, so I'm going to do percussion.
You seem like a person who wanted to play percussion.
No, I just wanted to be cool. Like I really didn't even care about the percussion.
So when did you give up on that?
Oh, immediately. Like I remember in the audition, they were like, all right, I'm going to have a rhythm test for you where you got to, do one rhythm with your right hand, one rhythm with your, right foot, and then left foot and left hand. And like, I had no rhythm whatsoever. And they're like, I don't think this is going to work. How about I recommend something? I was like, okay. And
You can't count, so here's a trombone.
Naturally, you have no rhythm. You can't count. You have bad judgment, so here's a trombone. And funny story was like, it's like, I was like, fine, because I could actually buzz on the trombone. They put it in my face, and I could make a buzz. And so they sent me home with the trombone, and I remember getting it. This was like in the middle of the summer, or at the beginning of the summer, and they're like, yeah, just check it out for the summer, and we'll see you first day of 6th grade. So I had this like old con pea shooter. And I remember I didn't know what the slide lock was. I thought it was like one of those things that like they cut off the first day of school and then you could use the slide. So I actually only practiced it in first position for the entire summer.
God. That's amazing.
I had no idea. And I remember getting there and everyone's warming up and I'm looking down the line and they're like doing all these positions. I'm like, how did you do that? When did you get yours cut off? Did you get yours cut? No, you still have yours. How did you get yours to move over there? And that's when John Bowles just walked up to me and he's like, this is going to be a long year, isn't it? And he just twisted it. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
The look of astonishment on your face at that moment, I wish I could see. Like your whole world just opened up. But all right, so you went through the Texas band machine. We could talk about Mr. Bowles, all day. He was like a second dad to me growing up, and he had so many successful students, including Zach Bond, of course, too. And so you went to UT after that, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What drew that interest?
So my dad went to UT for med school, and I actually was like in line to sort of follow what he did. Like my dad's a cardiologist. My stepmom at the time was a nurse. And so it was just like medicine. My mom actually was an accountant for a doctor as well. So it's just, and my grandfather was actually one of the scientists that discovered Alcon eye drops way back in the day.
Oh, really?
Yep. So he's in medicine too, and in the science field. So I was like, I guess I'll just kind of do that. And I remember, like, I would do all the music that our schools required of us, but I wouldn't do it like during the summer. Instead, during the summers, I would go off to do medicine camps. Like I did one in Houston, where I got to go see like them. We took apart a cadaver, and I've been in the room scrubbed out when people are getting like surgeries on their eyes, like their ACLs, like having a hernia removed. Like we got to, for like a whole month, I was in the hospital doing rounds. This camp in Houston was like the National Youth Leadership Forum on Medicine. That's what it's called.
Wow.
And so I entered UT as a human biology major. And like whenever I made All-State at my senior year, that was like the first accolade I had on my instrument that I was like, wow, maybe I'm good at this. And I could do something with this, because I always enjoyed music and I always enjoyed the people in music and that I got to hang out with, like the friends you make through music. I always enjoyed hanging out with them a lot more than people in my math and science classes. And so I remember,
what level of nerd are you more interested in?
Exactly. And I even showed up to UT. My major was still human biology. I was part of the pre-med program there, and like my heart wasn't in it. And whenever I saw like all the, I went to orientation and they like laid out basically like, this is the work that's expected of you to complete this program at UT. It's extremely rigorous, a lot of reading, a lot of stuff like that. And I knew I'm not like a good reader. I grew up with severe ADD and ADHD. And so like my focus, like, and John Bowles can attest to this, like my focus was just gone 99.9% of the time. And so like the idea of sitting down and having to read a ton of books and be successful at that and making good grades doing that, I was just like, this is just not what I'm built for. I'm built for more like hands-on kinesthetic learning. And so I switched immediately at orientation. I was just like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I'd rather be broke and doing something I love than rich and doing something I don't love. And so I switched to music right away. And like my family always told me like, they don't make that much money, but it never bothered me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, when you decided to let down and disappoint your family by choosing a career in music, like, that must have been hard.
Yeah,
all these scientists and doctors. And, I want to play the trombone.
I was kicked out of the house immediately. Disowned. They made me change my name. Yeah, no, they honestly, like, my dad was super supportive, and my grandfather actually, this was whenever I learned stuff about him I didn't really know. Like, he's a quiet guy, but, like, he kind of like lit up whenever I told him I wanted to do music, and I never knew he's a huge classical music nerd. And even to this day, like my grandfather's like 80 something. He doesn't talk very much, but if you get him going about like Rachmaninoff and Shostakovich, it's like all these memories come back from like his youth. And he's just like, he'll tell me about when he used to go to concerts and how much he loves. Like, he's like, oh, but this is like Shostakovich 7 is my favorite symphony. And I'm just like, how have we not had this conversation before? he's got all these LPs of Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, you know, that sort of stuff, and I had no idea. He's so into that. So I got a lot of support from my family, and of course a lot from my mom. She was like at every single, you know, band concert in high school, and then whenever I switched to music in college, she drove down for every single recital and was, you know, there for the concerts. And even when we went to Northwestern, they would go up there for my recitals, and actually had a very supportive family through that. And I think that's what honestly like was able to help me keep my, you know, nose to the grindstone there. And I don't know if I got that saying right, but
You got it.
yeah. But it kept me going was a lot of family support, and obviously John, being able to always call back on him. I remember even going to college, I came back to John. I was like, hey, can I get a lesson just to like see if I'm doing this right? Like, how do I take lessons with other people?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, my teacher's not singing the whole time while I play my rose shoes. I feel really uncomfortable.
Wow, so that was saying how he would sing while you play?
Louder than you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he had a
Right.
great tone too, man. Like when he's John's a bass trombone player, and he would play in lessons, and I just remember being like, "Wow, your sound is probably like 5 times bigger than mine. Like, how do I get the room to resonate like that?" Like he was a great example.
So at this point, I mean, you started on tenor trombone, and when did you switch to bass trombone?
I switched to bass trombone my junior year of undergrad, but I'd say my love for the bass trombone came way before that because of John. John played it all the time, and like I always thought it was. I mean, he had like an old Bach, like one of those ones that like you see on eBay now, and you're like, okay, I got to grab this right now. I'm not sure if it was a Mount Vernon one, but it's definitely one I still go back and play it, and I'm like, yeah, dude, this is a great bass. It's got those OE Thayers on it, and it's one of the old school goodies. But I remember my junior year of high school, they needed a bass trombone player in the top ensemble because they were recording for a Texas Honor Band. And they didn't have a bass trombone player. They didn't even own a bass trombone. But I liked low notes and I sucked at high notes. So they're like, you're going to play the bottom part in Hindemith Symphony in B flat. And
Nice.
I got like, that was my introduction to the low range, what low trombone could do and sort of the star moments you could have on it. And I always had like a, affinity for, low brass and low trombone parts at that point. And, I thought I was going to make it on tenor, but, Dr. Brickens at UT was really honest with me. He's like, hey, in so many words, Brian, you suck. Like, this isn't going to work for you. So
from what I've heard about him, I don't think he would say it that way.
No, it was a much more.
I've heard he's very nice. Yeah,
yeah. He drug that out into a full lesson of just compliments and gentle persuasion. But to save time, it was like you're not, you hate tenor clef, you hate alto clef, you hate notes above G above the staff, so play bass, and you don't have to worry about any of that.
And man, 4 years in Austin during undergrad, that sounds like heaven. I mean, do you ever miss that experience?
I don't, but I definitely cherish it, because I've had a lot of great experiences. Like Northwestern was also a very nurturing, amazing music school to go to. So I never went to Northwestern thinking like, man, I wish I was still at UT, but I am so thankful that I got 4 years at UT just because of like that, the education you get there. It's so fundamentally based. Like you are not going to leave University of Texas with bad fundamentals. Like it's just like it can't happen. Dr. Brickens is that way, that it's like, we'll get to music when you learn how to play that trombone in your hand.
And I was just curious what the town itself, because I mean it's one of my favorite American cities, and every time I'm there, I'm like, yeah, I could live here.
Yeah. It's changed a lot. I'm a bit of like an old Austin fan. When it wasn't a big city, it was like the biggest little city you ever went to, and you could get into music festivals without having to buy your tickets 2 years in advance. You could just show up to like Stubbs downtown and check out a new band, or like if your favorite band is playing, you could literally make the decision that day, like, hey, let's just get some tickets and go. And gosh, I freaking loved growing up with that sort of a music scene, such a diverse music scene, that here I am studying classical music, and like they have a symphony there, but like their arts funding is spread so far across the spectrum in Austin because there's so many different kinds of music thriving there that the symphony actually wasn't one of the big things I went to. Like I was going to all sorts of different kinds of music. Like you could pop into any bar and see a different band playing at 20 different bars along 6th Street. And it was really cool to not only hear that kind of music, but also seeing all those people out there with such a drive to make it, you know?
Well, you see that scene, I mean, maybe not to the level of Austin, but in a couple different places in the country that are both like a big city and a college town. Madison, Wisconsin is one of them, you know, but Austin has like the benefit of being a huge college town and the capital. So like you have like all this built-in interest. So I think that, you know, I've thought about this before with other cities. Like, why is Austin such a music scene? And it's like, that's why there's like built-in interest, you know, there's built-in audience. So, it's ripe for success, you know,
the resources of a city with the demographic of like a bajillion people, 18 to 25.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense. And Austin is, I can definitely see how it's gotten crazy. Like every time I go 6th Street, like, you know, it's like Times Square. You don't even want to go there. I always used to say that like Austin was like because it's one of the most liberal cities in America in one of the most conservative states in America, even though that's starting to change. But like I always said that it's where all the kids that grew up in super conservative households like escape to. Like they just moved to Austin to like.
That's actually pretty accurate for me. Yeah, it really like one thing I loved about Austin and the nurturing of the music is that there's those huge music festivals like ACL, Austin City Limits. Like 50,000 people would show up to Austin City Limits every summer, and you would. I remember being in these massive crowds watching Muse or like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers or MGMT that I was into at that point. Nice. And there were just a lot of great. It wasn't just like all the big money bands. Like it was also like a lot of bands that people haven't heard of. They were on the up and up that you could go see live, and it would just be like a big jam. And they had South by Southwest as well at a different part of the year. So it was just constant revenue coming in to like basically to help bands, you know, get a leg up. And that's where I think a lot of bands got their start and built their following is at these huge music festivals. And so it was a really cool time to be in Austin. And since then it's just been built up. And I heard that just recently Elon Musk is moving a lot of his headquarters there, and I'm like, oh great. Now no one like Austin does not have the highway infrastructure to handle that population. It already doesn't.
It's like Nashville. That's what's happened in Nashville too. It's like constant gridlock because there's no infrastructure for the amount of business that's moved there. It's gotten crazy, you know.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So you switched to bass trombone. You got into Northwestern. Into the Handsome Boys Club, as we like to call it.
You were there with our good friend Binder, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
the little mini Mick.
Mini Mick.
Oh, I love that.
I was just texting with Binder this morning.
Oh, nice.
You were there, and you were studying with. I think we talked to David, and you know the unique situation of teaching there at Northwestern, where you're studying with Mick, and you're studying with Randy Hawes, and you're studying with Doug Wright, and you're studying with was Tim Higgins there at this point?
No, for me, and Doug wasn't either, but it was Charlie Vernon's last 2 years, the 2 years I did my grad school there. It was Charlie Vernon, Pete Ellefson, and Mick Mulcahy.
It was still that team teaching stuff. Okay.
Right.
And how was that experience going from, obviously, you know, like you had John Bowles, and then you had Dr. Brickens. So you had one teacher, and now suddenly you have a resource of 3 teachers or more to pull on. How was that for you?
Man, you know, like as a grad student, I think it was exactly what I needed, especially guys with like jobs that I wanted. You know, the second in bass trombone of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and Pete Ellefson, who had been second in principal in Seattle and was teaching at Indiana as well. Like these were the guys I needed to study with because it's exactly what I wanted to do. So it was great because they all had their specialties, and they were really like a power trio while I was there. Because like obviously Charlie was, I mean, in Texas he's a god. I mean, in a lot of places he's a god, but you know, in
legend.
Yeah, right. And but in Texas it's like everybody knows who Charlie Vernon is. And so going up there, I was totally starstruck. Not even a bit, but totally starstruck. And so, but you know, getting to study bass trombone with him and Mick just blowing my mind. Like he would never tell me this is what you need to do with your chops to play trombone, but he would open my mind to the sort of philosophical approach to playing the instrument, and not tell me like, hey, can you crescendo more here? But he was like, can this passage sort of be like as the waves hit the beach sort of thing, like that gentle caress of the sand? And I'm like, wow. And he would like bring me to the window. We would look out at the lake, and he's like, you see those waves? See how they're doing? Like how they're doing that? Can you musically do that? I was just like, holy cow, I had never thought about using my surroundings to influence my approach to phrasing and music, and just, tone concept and just everything, like having those images was exactly what I needed. Because like I said, I'm not big into, like, if I read a book, like it tells me how to play trombone, that doesn't mean I'm suddenly going to know how to play trombone. But if you show me things like that works for me. And so Mick was great with that. Charlie, obviously the bass trombone aspect. And then Pete was one of those guys that you could ask him like, okay, literally, how do I do this? Like how do I play high range? What do I need to be doing with my lips? And he was he was a thinker like that could really, help point you in the right direction of physically what you needed to do. So it was a really well-rounded education there, but I can see how it would be easy for, and I think some of the undergrads did get a little bit lost in, all right, well, this teacher wants me to be working on this, but this one wants me to working on this, and this one wants me working on this. Like, you don't have consistent weekly lessons with the same person. You rotate. So you might get like one lesson a month with Mick, and having to come back a month later with the focus of what he needed you to fix could be, if you weren't an organized undergrad, which I totally wasn't at UT, it would be very difficult to streamline your progress.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think we teach this way at the three schools I teach at. It's the same faculty, myself, Damien, and Weston. It takes a little bit of tooling around with some people. It's better for, some not. But yeah, it just takes a little bit on the teacher side too to organize like how are we going to do this to make it effective for our students. But yeah, I can see it's like there are huge benefits, but for some people it could be a little, you don't have your feet on the ground.
Yeah.
So okay, at this point, you're taking auditions? I know you must be, because then you land one. What was your first audition? I know your first job, but what was your first audition?
Very first audition was Peoria Symphony.
Boom.
Peoria, yeah, the big leagues.
There's someone in the Peoria Symphony listening right now that's just like,
exactly.
Damn, Brian Hecht.
I mean it.
Unsubscribe.
I remember, I didn't take any auditions in undergrad because, like I said, Dr. Brookins was like, no, you need to learn how to play that trombone before I'm going to teach you excerpts and stuff. And I'm so glad he did, because I probably would have developed a lot of bad habits on those excerpts. But I didn't take any auditions in undergrad. In fact, I didn't even audition for music festivals and stuff. I didn't even know about those. But grad school, the Peoria, was actually before I entered. That's where I met all of my classmates, because all the other grad school and undergrad bass trombones were also at that audition. So we got to like hang out and meet each other, and like, oh, you're the fresh meat here at Northwestern. Like, we'll show you how it's done. And sure enough, they did. I bombed it. I remember like missing every note above the staff in creation, and just like,
do they not like when you do that?
It's one way to do it,
That was your interpretation.
It's a vibe.
No bonus points though. Yeah, it didn't go well.
So okay, walk us through. You take that audition, didn't go well. How long until you found some success in the audition circuit?
It was a bit. I think I stopped. I didn't take another audition after that for a year, because like I started having lessons with Charlie, and I'd record my excerpts, bring them in, and he was like, you're just missing too many notes. He was like tough love on me, and I needed that. And so I was like, all right, I've got some work to do. And he showed me, honestly, I didn't think that like burrs at the fronts of your notes was like a bad, like, or a deal breaker. I thought, oh, you're just being picky. But when Charlie told me, I was like, okay, well, he knows. So I better fix this. And so it took a lot of practice. And, he even got on to me when Buffalo came open, and I think Jeff D won. He was like, why aren't you at that audition? I'm like, I don't have $500 for the flight and hotel. And he's like, that's what credit cards are for, Brian. You don't got to pay it now.
This is sound financial advice.
That is not good advice.
No. And so I didn't take any auditions for a bit. And then finally, I remember I was submitting for like ITF and stuff. And again, just constantly bringing recordings to Charlie. And like, that was I think one of the greatest things I could do is I'd bring recordings in on my phone or on like a, recorder and just play them for Charlie, and just getting to watch his immediate reaction to hearing stuff. Even if he didn't say it, I could know like, okay, that I nailed that little part, good, or that was not good enough. Like you could just see it on his face. And then he would give me great comments. And I think then the next audition I took was my second year was for the Northwest Indiana Symphony Orchestra. And I made finals. And I was like, whoa, I can't believe I actually made finals. And I remembered, I didn't win it, but it got me on their sub list. And the funny story was that I remember this was my first like real gig. Where I was driving down, there was like a gala concert at a casino in Muncie, Indiana, which is about like 45 minutes from Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I was driving down, and I was on the express lanes, which have exits like every 25 miles or something bogus. And I missed my exit because like I'm sitting there watching the Horseshoe Casino go by, and I'm like, that's where I'm supposed to be. And it's 15 minutes till downbeat. Okay.
What?
And yeah, I didn't, because I had a tough time understanding northern traffic. Like in Texas, 10 miles is about a 12-minute drive. Right? Even with traffic, it might be a 15-minute drive. If you can stay on the side roads and stuff. In Chicago, 10 miles that's an hour drive. Like easy. And I definitely did not gauge that correctly coming from Evanston. And so I remember being at the toll booth, and I was like, I told the person at the toll booth, I was like all the way on the right one. And I was like, I need to get off right there. This is like an emergency. And I'm in like a tuxedo. I'm not really sure how much this person believed me, but I was like, I have to make it to that casino. And the guy kind of like looked at me. He was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I can't just let you."
A Bond villain.
Yeah. He's like, "I can't let you across." I was like, "You don't understand. I need this job. Like, please." And so he like radioed into the other toll booths. And he was like, "Hey, hold everybody for a second. We got someone coming across." And
That's
so
amazing.
I went like across 5 lanes. I turned around to the other toll booth and then crossed all of those lanes and exited for the Horseshoe Casino. And I remember Kirk Muspratt was the conductor, and he's sitting, like it's like literally 5 minutes till we're supposed to go on downbeat, and he's sitting behind the stage door, just sort of like going through Pines of Rome, like thinking, what are my tempos? And he sees me fly backstage, just running, to the dressing rooms, my horn, and I was just like, give me a minute. Like one thing you probably should never say to the conductor, like just wait for me. And I remember,
I remember my first gig.
but I got dressed so fast that I got out there for Pines, and I sat down, and I was just like, I could not get my heart rate under control. But I learned a lot.
You got a whole movement to get your heart rate under control in Pines.
I know, but I was just dripping sweat, and that was a nightmare. I learned a lot, not only with that audition, first time making finals, but then getting to play a gig with them a few weeks later. I was like, okay, so this is what not to do, And
they're like, we clearly picked the right guy, so now
Dude,
we know.
Never got called again.
Oh
They
no!
never called me again. And
But these are good lessons to learn, right? I mean,
yeah.
There's so many lessons you have to learn in winning an audition, even if you're a good player. But then getting the job, it's a whole other thing, and it's nice to have the opportunity to make mistakes in a place that maybe might not come to bite you, where it's going to be detrimental to your career, but you got to learn it. So go into the Navy, and I'd love to hear about that audition process. And I'm really curious if that changed you at all, being in such a structured, disciplined atmosphere.
I needed that, that's for sure. I was like I said, I grew up with ADD, ADHD. I was so like all over the place mentally. But I guess, sorry, I didn't answer your question before. My first job was Kenosha Symphony.
Boom.
I finally nailed one and was the bass trombonist of the Kenosha Symphony for 2 seasons. And then when I graduated, I won the Navy in 2009. But yeah, the audition process there, it shocked me at first because it was very different. Like usually you don't have to play sight reading. In fact, the only audition I'd played sight reading before was the Illinois Philharmonic, and the sight reading was Kyrie from Mozart Requiem, which I had never heard before until the guy before me played it. Jared Lancey was right before me. And I remember hearing him play it, and I was like, what is that one? Like, I don't have that in my book. Sitting there, and I also took a lot of his tempos, because like, oh, the ride's supposed to go that fast. Like, and I was taking it way too slow. And so I remember I went in there, I did that, and I got to the sight reading, and I remember looking at the proctor. I was like, "Hey, what's the tempo?" He was like, "Just play, look at the page and play." And I
dun 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 dun.
It had to have been a comical relief for them to just hear my sight reading just bomb it, because it was guaranteed nowhere near what it should have been. I was probably missing all sorts of notes. Needless to say, that did not go well for me. But Navy Band, I got there and I was like, sight reading is something that you may have to do. With military bands, you just got to expect it. And they even told me, I made the first audition was in March of 2009 before I graduated, and I made finals. Me and Dana Landis, I think, in finals. And
wait, this was for the Navy Band?
Yeah.
Dana was my roommate in school in New York.
Shut up! No way. What a small world, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was me and him, and we both did great on the excerpts. I mean, you know Dana, he's a phenomenal player, but we both bombed the sight reading because it was like they threw down one of those pieces that's like it should have been put on like a full page, but because in the military they play out of those little books, they basically created it was like, I don't know if it was Flight of the Bumblebee or Circus Bee. No, Circus Bee, I think.
Oh, wow.
It's not Flight of the Bumblebee, but there'd be one note. But it's Circus Bee. And it has this crazy roadmap where you play the top, go through the trio, play the first ending, skip the second ending, go to the bottom line, then go back to the third bar of the trio, hit the second ending, go da capo fine. And so I remember playing the whole excerpt at this first audition, and I never played the bottom line. And I was like, where the heck was that supposed to go? And I had no idea. And they were just like, thanks. And Dana did the same thing. Like, we had no idea where that bottom line was supposed to fit in. And so they said no higher.
That's some gotcha sight reading. That's
yeah. And I remember calling them afterwards, like, hey, can comments please? Like, what did I do wrong, man? I know I missed some things here and there, but what can I do better for next time? They're like, just learn how to sight read.
Whoa.
And so I remember over the summer, one of my really good friends, she worked in the library at Northwestern. They've got a huge wind ensemble library. And I was like, hey, I will pay you $60, $100 if you can, in your free time, make copies of every single march you can get your hands on. And so she did. She sent me like probably 50, 60, Carl King, Sousa marches, whatever. And I just had that stack on my stand. And this was a recommendation from one of the guys in the Navy Band. And every day I would spend time just in my practice sessions doing just do the next one and give myself 30 seconds to look over it. And, you develop a routine for whenever you have 30 seconds to sight read, what do you need in order to get through it? And that was my goal. Just get through it and rely on my fundamentals to, give me good sound and good notes and articulations and stuff. And so that was tremendously helpful because I had looked at so many marches that by the time the sight reading came back around, it wasn't sight reading at all. I had seen the pieces before. And so I was ready and I was like, oh, yeah, Rolling Thunder. Got it. Let's do this. And so I was able to play it.
Good for you.
The way I wanted it to. And yeah, that was the one that, sealed the deal for me and I won. And yeah, that October went to boot camp in December. And that I still have boot camp nightmares. I want to hear about that. Day, just the other day, I was telling my wife that I had a dream that it's the same dream, but different scenarios every time where I've been called back to boot camp. Right.
Was it that bad?
I hated it. I don't like being told what to do. Especially for no reason. Fold your underwear. Well, why? I'm about to wear it. Just and they're like, get the corners right. I'm like, this is good enough. It's going to fit. I'm not, I don't work well with that. And so it was a solid, a little over 2 months. I mean, if you see my report cards all through elementary school, middle school, high school, I would get D's and F's in conduct. And so I have a history of not listening to my teachers. And then suddenly I have to go to boot camp. And they set me straight, man. It was, like I said, I still have these nightmares where I'm in the symphony and I'm coming home and I get called hey, we need you back. And I have to tell my wife and kids okay, I'll see you in 2 months. I got to go to boot camp. And they're dropping me off and I'm forcing myself to wake up. Yeah.
Well, you want to hear something? I have a student. He's actually an alumni of the retreat. He is a new member of Pershing Zone. And
that's great.
He went to boot camp I think in January, February of 2020, and got stuck at boot camp because of COVID.
What?
So he was stuck there for like an extra couple weeks or something.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Did you get in trouble for, I mean, did you ever have moments in boot camp where you just like couldn't help but like saying a smart comment or something? Or did you eventually, I mean, you have to just play the game at some point, right?
Yeah, but they broke me for sure. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I remember there were times where like they made me a section leader because I was one of the older ones there. Most of the people in boot camp were fresh out of high school, right? And I was one of the older ones. They also, one of the things I was told was, do not let them know that you're in the band. Like,
I've
or
heard that.
they might know that you're in the band, but don't let them know that you're in the Navy band in DC, because those people come out of boot camp and automatically go into E6. Like, it takes usually 12 to 13 years in the Navy to make it to E6. And so my drill sergeants were E6s and E7s on I think I made it through a full week before they found out. It was week 2. I got called into the office and they're like, Hecht, get the hell in here. And so I go in there and they have my file and they're just like all gathered around with this sinister like look on their face. Like, so you're going to be an E6 when you get out of here, huh? And I was like, oh, yeah, uh-huh. And they're like, do you know how long it took me to get to E6? How long did it take you, Jeff? How long did it take you, Dave? And they're all like, oh, 12 hard-earned years. And they're like, so the chief looks at them and it's like, boys, let's give him 12 years of hell while he's here for 2 months.
Oh, God.
So they would have chiefs from other units come into our unit and they're like, where's your E6? Where's he at? Bring him to the front.
Oh, my God.
And so I'd have to go to the front while everyone's like folding laundry or doing whatever. I would sit there and have to do, it was called IT, intensive training. Like push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, running, like all this stuff. Just basically you're sweating your butt off. And to the point where like I forgot what it was called, like my unit, like not like squad, but my buddies in the unit would like feel bad for me and they would come up and do it with me. Like, wow. I was like, that, I always thought that was really cool. And like, those are the guys I kept in touch with for a little while for a few years while we were all still in the Navy. But they just thought it was hilarious that I was just the person they picked on. But they made me a section leader. And so I was like, all right, well, fine. You want me to be a section leader? I'll try to be a leader. You know, I'll try to do the thing. And so like when we would do marching drills, like I was raised in Texas marching band. I know how to march. Like, and it was simple stuff. Like everybody follow the lines on the ground. We're going to do this turn. Right. And everybody knows how to do that marching band turn. Like the people there were they were not understanding how to do it. So like I would try and like give pointers, like, keep your heels on the line and you'll just, match the toe, like whatever. And I remember getting yelled at so bad. And I'm like, what do you want? Do you want me to be a section leader? Or if not, like just put me back there. And that was the wrong thing to say. I should have just taken it to the point where the chief, I remember it was like week 4, the chief came up. She got right in my face. She was, Heck, shut up. I hate you. And just like walked off.
What?
And I was just
preschool?
Like, I couldn't believe it, but it actually like got to me because I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to like try to do the thing. And like, I remember they like from then on, they were constantly just like, heck, shut up, like get to the back. And they took my section leader pin for like a couple days. Then they gave it back to me. And I remember when they gave it back to me, I actually threw it on the desk and I was like, find someone else. And that was also a bad idea.
Dude.
You rebel.
They hated me. But like I said, dude, they broke me after a while. Like that, whenever I did that and I threw the section leader pin back at them, they called me back in there and they just verbally beat me down to the point where I was in tears. And when they got me to the peak of like, there's actually tears coming down my face. They're like, all right, get out of here right now and go back to your unit. And I had to like walk out and all my friends are staring at me coming out of the office. And I'm crying. I'm like legit crying. I'm just like, come on, man up. Like, you're not like, don't show your tears here. But it's like, it is what it was, like, and at that point I was like, all right, I guess I understand what I got to do to make this work.
Were you just counting the days till the end?
Oh, dude. Yes. Well, because also at the end was Christmas for me. Like I went in end of October and 2 months I came out was the end of December. And I remember I got out like December 22nd or 21st, something like that, and literally went home and it was Christmas. So it was like, I was not only looking forward to get out, I was looking forward to family and Christmas and honestly getting back to my instrument. Like I had my mom send me a picture of me playing my trombone, and that's what I had in my
That's
locker.
adorable.
Next to like next to some family photos was like, picture of my trombone, and
It was like a faded memory. You're like, oh yeah, that was me once.
yeah. And funny thing was like I still dream about too is they pulled me aside at the beginning of boot camp and they're like, hey, you have a master's and scored 98 on the ASVAB, which is, it's a high school equivalency test. Like I hope I can score a 98 after having a undergrad and master's, and they're like, you're real smart. I'm like, if you knew me, you wouldn't say that. But they were like, do you want to put the trombone down right now and we can make you an officer? And I was like, this was 48 hours into boot camp, where when you first get to boot camp, they don't let you sleep. Like they want to try and break you the first day, and it works for a lot of people. But like you stay up for 48 hours straight. They feed you barely at all. You have to like strip down naked in front of like, they separate guys and girls. And like the first thing you do is you strip down naked, put everything into a box that you own. Like it's like a ceremonial thing of like you becoming part of the military. You put it in a box, put your parents' address on it, and they ship it all home. And from then on, everything in your possession is something that was assigned to you. So you put on their like huge whitey tighties, all the camos and everything. And so it's sort of that like rebranding of you. They pulled me aside for 48 hours, and they were like, all right, now's your chance to become an officer. We can give you a really, a different life. And I was like, could I play trombone and still be an officer? They're like, no way. You could conduct, but you can't play trombone. I was like, well, I want to play trombone. They're like, you sure? Wow. Like, we'll triple your salary and make you an officer. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm gonna go play trombone. And they couldn't believe that someone would choose to play trombone over, like, I guess the money of being.
And this is before they knew like you were gonna have a pretty high rank.
Yeah,
when you were done.
Right. I guess they thought I was just gonna go be like an E2 or an E3 at a fleet band, which those are still amazing jobs too. But they were, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm here because I'm going to play trombone.
I've always been curious about that whole process because, of course it makes sense if you're training someone to go off into war and battle, you have to be able to trust them and you have to break them down, blah, blah. But like keeping on to your sense of self and your own identity, are you kind of just discovering more about yourself, or is it totally just kind of breaking everything down? Is it hard to hold on to who you are going through a process like that?
No, it is like you stay who you are, but you learn a lot about what you can handle, like emotionally and physically. Like I've never been so physically drained in my life. I've never been so I have been emotionally drained in my life plenty of times after that. But that was one of the first times that I was like literally beat down, and there's nothing you can do about it. I've always been bullied my life, like I didn't grow into my lips until I was like an undergrad or grad school. So like it was like there's my face, and then half of my face is just lips. So I got bullied a lot, but you could always go home and get away from it. And boot camp, like you're around the people bullying you essentially 24/7. I remember being so exhausted from everything that so they actually they kept some like lights on at night. And I was on a top bunk, literally right beneath one of these lights, and I could still sleep through like these office, lights every single night that was red. So like at night, it was white during the day, like this office style lighting, and then they would put like every 5 lights would be red at night. And I just remember like sitting underneath one of them, like a McDonald's hamburger, and I would still just sleep right through it.
Oh man,
it gets you. But I think a lot of people are proud of the person they become after they get through it.
Mm-hmm. Man, and yeah, so you got through it. You got to do the gig finally. You got to pick up your trombone again. I imagine it was a process getting back in shape.
Oh, dude. Yeah, because you only get to play. I got to practice for 30 minutes every Saturday. Like the recruiter taught me how to sneak my mouthpiece in. So I brought my like Greg Black 1 1/4 in, and I tucked it into my sock. And then when we all had to like strip down, and like he was like, just quickly switch socks, like tuck it into your new socks that they have like. You have like a bunch of socks rolled into a ball, just shove it in one of them. So I got to keep my mouthpiece there. And once you get it through that process, they don't really care that you have it. And
were you nervous? Did you feel like a secret agent when you were trying to pull that off?
Yes, except that I was like absolutely naked. So the nerves of the mouthpiece, I was like, I don't even care, dude. Like I'm just get me dressed. And we got 30 minutes every Saturday to go practice. And they had this like, they had a bass trombone there. It needed some help, but they had a dependent bass trombone for me to at least play on. And some of my some of my colleagues in the Navy band, there was a euphonium player there and a flute player there that were a month ahead of me. So they kind of showed me the ropes and the right things to say, to tell your drill sergeant stuff, what to say to them, to have them let you come practice. So every Saturday I got out of breakfast early. I'd scarf it, and then I'd go eat while they went back to I forgot all the names for this stuff, back to the dorm or whatever, to get ready to go to drill practice, because my unit was the musical unit, but it was called a triple threat, because we were the band for all the graduations, the marching band. We were a rifle unit and a flag unit. So every Saturday we'd split off into 3 groups and go prep for all the graduations. And every Saturday afternoon or Sunday, we would do the graduations for all the graduating units. And so like I'd get to practice a little bit, but I mean, I was still super out of shape, because then there was no practicing. It was like just run the charts for like an hour, and then you go off to do, fire training or something. And so when I finally got to the band, man, it took like 3 months before not only I got my chops back, but then, because I got there in December, it's freezing in DC, January, February. Like they have, like, compared to Texas, legit winters. And like, like playing outside on a metal mouthpiece, I learned really quick to get that plastic rim. And actually, I still have the one the guy gave me right here. It froze to the lead pipe. And when I pulled it out to give it back to him, the lead pipe came with it. And he was like, just keep it. So this is my first mouthpiece in the Navy band. And it took a long time, because you not only do you sound like garbage, but then when you're standing like in the snow and you have to then try and play a chart, you especially sound like garbage. And so it was like
you went right into work, like right after boot camp. You had to start working right away and be playing.
Pretty close. There was like a 3-week period where they're like, no, just get adjusted. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to adjust. Like I just went through 2 months waiting to do this. Like, put me in, coach. And they kind of laughed at me, because they were like, you're gonna regret that statement. Like, no one's ever gotten here and begged me to put them on a funeral before. And I was like, dude, just let me do something. I'm sitting around my house doing nothing. Like, let me do something. And they're like, they put me in after about 2 weeks, and I was off doing funerals for about 6 months before I got to get on stage. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
They say that Brian Hecht does put the fun in funeral.
Oh my God.
Do they?
Yeah. I've heard that on the streets, I think.
We called the Navy band. They were raving.
But now you got your beautiful coif of hair, so I mean you're like yeah.
I haven't shaved my beard either since I left the military. Like not once. I hated that.
Oh, you mean like all the way down?
Yeah, I just use like clippers and I go to stubble.
I wouldn't call that a beard. I'd call that stubble.
Well, but look at yours, man. Yours is impressive.
Exhibit A.
Yeah. If that's the example to live by, then yeah.
And this has been trimmed down a couple times since the pandemic. I need to do it again. I'm getting a little willy woolly going on.
Is that the tone beard?
the tone beard,
that's
yeah,
where you get
right.
that luscious tone from, just the coif.
That's it, yeah.
He just grows it until his wife yells at him, and that's when he knows it's time to cut it.
Yeah, she's getting a little bit like, maybe it's time to cut the beard.
She's finding like beard hairs in her soup. Okay,
one time, Nick had his beard about this long, and we thought it'd be super cool. We just Googled Civil War beards, and we found the most ridiculous one. And he shaved you shaved like down the middle.
Yeah, I just went here, so
under your chin.
It was sideburns up into a mustache, and just the chin part shaved all the way down.
Get that guy a mustache.
I bet I can.
Yeah, there's a picture of it, and his wife came home, and we could just say she was not pleased.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I need to see this picture.
It's.
I'll try to find it while we keep going. How long were you in the Navy band before you got to your current station, as it were?
I did just one enlistment, 4 years. Yep.
How many push-ups could you do right now?
Oh, man, that's
could you pass a PT test?
Nope, not even close, dude. Not even close. I can get like maybe 20, 25 out. No way. No, you need at least like I think I had to get 80 out in 2 minutes to pass. Oh. And like if you did over 100, then that was like top marks. But like Navy SEALs were cranking out like 125 in 2 minutes, and they would train on the other side of the gym from us. And so like they were like that was always they were comparing us to them. It's like, you guys are things I can't say on this podcast. Just bleep it out and make it sound like I said something crazy. But they would show us the SEALs over there, and they were obviously in different colored outfits, uniforms, and stuff, and they were doing these like crazy push-ups way faster than all of us. But I used to be able to do like 85 to 95 in 2 minutes, and I was pretty proud of that. At my peak, I did 105 one time in the Navy band, but now at maybe 20, 25.
So you were like ripped coming out of Navy though. Like out
Dude,
of boot
I had
camp,
a
you're
six
probably
pack. Like now I have a keg.
dad pack.
Seriously.
All right, sorry, go on about Atlanta.
So yeah, I just did the one enlistment 4 years, and I actually didn't even finish it whenever I got into the Atlanta Symphony, which was kind of a fun story altogether. But whenever I came here, because they let Nate out. Nate was in the Atlanta Symphony, so I was talking to him like, how am I supposed to get out? And he was like, well, do these things. I got out early. Go talk to him and say these things, and that's how you get out. And Bill Thomas, who was in the Atlanta Symphony, also got out of the Navy band early. Plenty of people there had been precedent of people getting out of the military early. Well, we got a new command master chief in that was like, I'm putting a stop to that. Like, you're not getting out early. I'm going to talk to the Secretary of the Navy, and, like, no, we're not going to let you out early. I'm like, okay. Well, someone came up with the idea of transferring my duty station from Navy Band DC to recruiting station Atlanta. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, but it got me out of the Navy band. So they transferred me. Actually, whenever I got to Atlanta, I started playing at the symphony. I would have to go to work, go to ASO, bring my military, we called them khaki and blacks. It was black pants and a khaki button down. And then I'd go from ASO to the recruiting station and check in the first couple of weeks. Yep. To the point where they're like, dude, I started with ASO in September, but my end of enlistment was end of October. So about 8 weeks left in my enlistment. And they're like, what am I going to do with you? Like, by the time I get you trained, I'm not even going to be able to use you. So just stop showing up. You're a pain in my ass. And so they, like, after about a week of showing up, they're like, just don't come in. It's fine. And so
amazing.
Coast out.
Wow. Well, that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been there 7 years almost.
Yeah.
Almost 8 years.
This is
Oh
my
God.
eighth season. I can't believe it. Jeez Louise. 8th season.
Yeah.
So playing in the band, were you kind of having this mindset of like, I'm doing my job, but I'm also trying to get better every day and preparing for the ultimate, like I want to be in an orchestra someday.
100%.
Like mentally. So how did the whole process go, like getting ready for this audition? Was it, I mean, imagine it was difficult getting permission to even take auditions. So
oh my God.
you probably weren't taking that many.
No, I was taking every audition under the sun. Like I had called when I got in the Navy band. I called Mulcahy and I was like, "Hey, this is not my dream job. How do I ensure that I still have a shot at my dream job in 4 years? Like, I can't get out of my enlistment for 4 years. But if I don't take an audition for 4 years, like, am I going to be ready to take an audition and win one in 4 years?" And he's like, "Keep the water boiling," is what he said to me. Keep the pot on the stove. And so he's like, keep taking the auditions. Like, turn them down if you win them. Turn them down. Like, that's good news to win it. And it's, like, not nice to turn it down, but, like, cross that bridge when you get to it. And I didn't win any, but it was a lot. It was 4 years of really good experience going to auditions, doing better every single time, like making semis, then making super semis, then making finals, and then making runner-up to George for the New York Philharmonic my last year. So it was like, I'm so glad I kept taking those auditions because I kept getting better at them. And I was peaking at the right moment. It took me 4 years of doing auditions to get to where I was for New York Phil. And that's the only reason why I got the invitation for Atlanta, was because when New York took their bass trombone, they were like, all right, well, who was the runner-up? We'll offer them a 1 year with us. And so I got a call actually walking out of that audition from Nate saying like, hey, sorry that New York didn't go your way, but we have an opening now. Do you want to come move to Atlanta?
Wow, word travels fast.
That's the best consolation after an audition disappointment ever.
It really was. I mean, honestly, and I was not like super sad walking out of that audition. I was so happy to have even make it that far, because I showed up to that audition thinking like, okay, this is New York. This is just going to be good experience. And I remember even whenever they announced that I had advanced out of semis, I was there there were like some huge heavy hitters and some of my mentors in my round of semis. And I don't want to name any names, but like, I remember I was there with my buddy from Northwestern, Kevin Hakes. He was in my round with me. And whenever they announced that I had advanced, I actually asked him, I was like, wait, hold on. Are you sure that like, you sure that number lines up with me and not like that guy, who I was, just way up here in my mind. They're like, And Kevin turns to me like, Brian, shut up and take it. I was just like, I just want to check. I don't want you to be wrong. And me get like all excited. And she was like, it was Nishi Badwar. I don't know if y'all worked with her, but she was like, yep, number 22, Brian Hecht, like you're advanced to finals with Jeff D and George Curran. I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember I didn't even have a hotel for that night. I had my Bolt bus booked back to DC that night that I had to skip the Bolt bus. I wasn't even planning on making it that far, and I had to find a hotel. I found it was Hotel Amsterdam, just like up like 10 blocks up this. You know what I'm talking about, Nick?
It's like a flop house.
Dude, it's terrible.
I know, it's like for the down and out.
Yeah.
Or for people in the finals of the New York Philharmonic. Whatever, either way.
I was hoping you were going to say something like, I snuck into the Lincoln Center basement and climbed inside a box.
But yeah, I went up there and I found it was $100 for the night, which I couldn't believe because New York City hotels are outrageous. But I remember,
Yeah, I mean,
That should tell you something.
let's put it this way: the Hotel Amsterdam is a hotel in the same way that Olive Garden is an Italian restaurant.
yes,
It's like kinda, you know,
dude.
maybe.
I was basically staying in what I think used to be a kitchen, but that they put a bed in, and
Nice.
it was so tiny. I remember the door opened and hit the end of the bed. And so you had to like, you push your luggage in first and then the trombone and threw it on the bed. And I like sort of skirted in. And I remember I had to, in order to practice, I had to set, I had a foldable stand. I set it up on the other side of the bed and I stood on the other side of the bed and played across the bed because that's the only way that my slide would reach all the way out to sixth.
I can't believe someone didn't try to stab you for doing that,
dude.
in Hotel Amsterdam.
And well, because I had a horror story from the night before. Actually, the night before my semifinal round at for New York, I stayed with a buddy from college who was like one of my party buddies, and that was a big mistake because he never stopped partying. And he knew I was coming to take New York Phil audition. He was a bass trombone player, and he's now an arranger and stuff, and very, very, very good guy. But paper thin walls of New York City apartments, he let me stay on his couch. Well, he chose that night to pull an all-nighter watching Caddyshack on rerun with his buddies, who all showed up with six-packs. And they're like, hey, do you mind if a few friends watch a movie? And I'm like, dude, your house, go for it. But it's like, it's 10:30, I'm going to go to bed. I've got early rise. And he was like, okay, we'll try to keep it down. They did not try to keep it down.
That's always a good lesson, too, because you always want to, if you're going to an audition, it's always tempting to stay with a friend because, of course, it'll save money. So it's either stay with like a very boring, serious friend or just spend the money on the hotel. It's always kind of worth it.
Yep.
Yeah, I should.
I learned that lesson along the way, too.
Dude, it was so loud. Even whenever I left the next morning, they were still going. I left at 8 a.m., but I didn't get any sleep. I even I'm a hard sleeper too, but like the wall, I swear the walls are so thin, they could have been in the same room as you. And even I woke up every hour and then I finally put like my headphones in and tried like some sleep music, but I could hear them over it. And so I just kept waking up. Finally, I was up at 6:30 and I just like studied. And I left at 8 and I knocked on his door and they were just like, a couple of them in there just hammered, still watching Caddyshack. I'm like, I bet this was a great night for you guys. But this was like, and I didn't say it, but I was just like, all right, I'm going to go. And he's like, great, good luck, man. Kill it. I was like, I hate you.
Wow.
And then it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. It ended up working out. And that was, that was the culmination of a story that I definitely did still take auditions in the Navy band. And it was a nightmare to, get leave approved for a lot of these auditions. Because the moment they found out you were taking an audition, it was almost like they didn't want to approve leave. So you kind of had to just keep your cards to your chest and be like, it's just, I need leave for personal reasons. And they couldn't really push too hard on that. So
you like you said, this is your eighth season, did you say, in the ASO?
Yeah.
So obviously this season is not a normal season in any way, shape, or form for anyone. But you get a lot of opportunities normally to go and play with other huge orchestras and you play, you go and do master classes and you do recitals and things like that. So what are some of the things you do have coming up that are on the books for when normal returns, whatever that's going to look like?
Yeah.
Or is that TBD?
Oh no, thankfully I got some offers before all of this went down for this summer, and they said that they're still going through with it. So I hope that vaccine keeps rolling and works and brings numbers down so that I can actually get on these planes. I hope I get a vaccine. If I don't get a vaccine for the summer, I'm not doing any of it.
I just saw an
Hopefully.
article that young healthy bass trombonists are at the top of the list to get the vaccine.
Are we
first.
essential?
So I think
Yeah.
I think you're fine.
Thank goodness. Phew.
No, I think your newspaper had the U and N smudged out before the word essential. Sorry.
Or I had my thumb over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've got I'm soloing with the National Brass Quintet of Lithuania. Actually,
As you do.
Oh.
as you do, the Trakai Fanfare Week. That's this summer. I'm doing that with Jens Lindemann, and that I'm looking forward to that. It's like it's just outside of the capital, Vilnius. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I've got there's this like biennial thing they do in Mexico City that they had like Nate and George down a couple years ago, and they're having me, and I'm not sure who the tenor is coming down for that. I think that's in June, and then ITF in Columbus.
We'll see you there.
We'll see you there.
Heck yeah,
Heck
that's
yeah.
awesome. Heck
yeah.
man, I missed opportunity.
That can be.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we make
man,
a
you gotta plug
hashtag
it.
out of that? Like,
At least or a T-shirt would be. I would be down
you
for
go.
that. Yeah, heck yeah.
well, I'm curious
Yeah.
because I mean, you're clearly very resourceful. I mean, obviously, you're a beautiful player, and we enjoy everything we've heard of you, and you're very active on social media, and great about just getting yourself out there. And you have this great new resource with the Slide School. I'm curious if any with the Atlanta Symphony, and you can talk as much as you want about it, but there's been ups and downs, and some years where maybe I think there were some strike years and some things where you weren't necessarily sure. And I'm curious if all this resourcefulness and just getting out there was maybe related to that at all, because a lot of people can get jobs and just like, this is my job, this is what I do, this is all I do, I'm happy doing it. But you're getting out there and doing a lot of things. Was that related at all?
I think it definitely was a catalyst, but I think it's rooted in that I got into music because of all the melodies that I would hear that would like have an emotional impact on me. Like I'm a pretty emotional person, and like I guess I'm one of those people that I feel like I feel emotions real deeply, and music kind of like hits at the core of that. And there's not many bass trombone parts that allow for that sort of connection with music in the orchestra. So it's like occasionally, like we're doing Strauss's Bourgeois Gentilhomme this season. And it's like that's one of those gems that it's like, well, I actually get to play the melody, and it's actually meant for the bass trombone to be one of the solo voices. And so, but it's such a rare opportunity that I was like, I'm not getting a lot of fulfillment the way I thought I would, just doing that sort of the job of the bass trombone blending in the orchestra. And so I looked like early on, even when I got in the Navy band, I looked for lots of opportunities that it's like, look, you don't even have to pay me. Like, just let me come to your school and give a recital. And actually my first recital tour, I was an Edwards artist at the time, and Christian helped me out a lot. He's like, all right, well, for each university, I'll give you like $250. And that covered, I would stay with friends. So I would cover meals, I would cover gas, and it would cover my accompanist. So I literally made zero money, and I did this whole Texas recital tour. And I just loved it because it was the only chance I get to play the melody and to get to actually like connect with people through music. And like I'm not great with words. And so like, that's like a lot of times whenever there's things I want to say, I don't have the poetic language to be able to get it out through the English language. I need music to be able to express these things, or else it just bottles up. Like I've had a lot of things in my life that music saved me from, and music was the reason I was able to emotionally get through it. But I'm a sharing person. Like I wanted to share that with people. Obviously there's nobody in your practice room. And so I wanted to tell my story that way, and that was my opportunity. So I would do everything I could to just play and, make connections with people, play for people. And one of my students even said one time, he's like, you don't say no to anything. And I was like, yeah, I kind of don't. Like a lot of times it doesn't matter.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Brian, give me $1 million.
Okay. Fine. I'll take out a loan. But yeah, that's where it started. And the lockout was really fortunate because, man, we live in a great world, guys, where, it doesn't matter if like what orchestra you play in, we have this connection, you know, like, and it's like we're a big, you know, trombone family. Like when we got locked out, like I can't tell you how many phone calls we got from other trombone sections that was just like, hey, can we get you out? Like, here's some weeks we have. Like Tim Higgins got in touch with me, and I remember being at a bar, and I knew who Tim Higgins was. Was very surprised that he even knew who I was. And like, he's just a great guy like that, you know. And like, he contacted me. He was like, "Hey, man, he's never heard me play. He didn't know if I could have, you know, done a good job in San Francisco, but he knew that I wasn't making any money. I wasn't being paid." And he called and he was like, "Hey, can we get you and Nate out? What can we do? Like, these are the weeks. Are you free?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm free. I'm not doing anything." And so he got me out for a couple weeks. Houston came helped us out a little bit. Mick got us some teaching. Like, a lot of the orchestras on my list of orchestras I've played with happened during that time that we were just popping around to orchestras that were, you know, basically helping us pay our bills. And
well, that's when I met you. You got called by the Philharmonic to come up.
That's right.
And that you needed to borrow a mute, and so we met up for some cocktails. You and your wife, and we met up and had some cocktails.
I'm still embarrassed from that night because I made it about 2 beers in, and I had to admit to you, I was like, "Nick, I'm having a great time. I want to keep hanging, but I'm wasted right now, dude." Like, and I got rehearsal tomorrow morning. Do you remember that? Hopefully not.
That's what Nick does to people.
Yeah.
I'm a bad influence. I'm a good bad influence.
Well, it was these high gravity. Well, you showed me like all these great places. Like we went to the first place we went was like that. It was like a cocktail lounge right there.
Yeah, Lincoln, the Italian restaurant.
Yeah, man, they had some amazing cocktails. And the thing is, I was used to drinking beers. This was before I was like got into bourbons, got into cocktails. So I had a couple of old fashions, and it hit me hard. And I hadn't had much to eat. And it was, I remember then we went out, it was like Nick, you, me and my wife, and we had an awesome time. We then went to like a Belgian beer place. And I remember having these like 11%, 9% beers. And after like 2 of them, I was like, okay, I like was not up to snuff on my, my Belgians, and it kicked my butt.
And then he's like, "Let's watch Caddyshack." Should we do the rapid fire questions?
You got to get them going.
Okay. I forgot to write them down, but I think I remember them. I can steal some. So yeah, we started a newer thing where we just ask some quick questions towards the end to get some quick answers. That always tend to be long answers, but that's okay. Okay, let me pick some of the good ones. So quick, dumb trombone ones. Thayer valve, rotor valve, any sort of valve?
Thayer valve all the way, every day.
All right, Texas.
Day.
What is your favorite piece to play? You could pick an orchestra piece and a solo piece.
Favorite piece to play? It's for me. It's a toss. Yeah. For the orchestra, it's a toss up between like Tchaik symphonies and Mahler symphonies. Nice. For different reasons, but I love both those the same because you're always active. You're not sitting there just counting a ton of rests. So those are the fun ones for me. And then solo pieces. Honestly, my number one fave right now is Elegy by Joe Bono. That one's deep.
That's a beautiful piece.
Amazing. Yeah. And it's just like every time I get to perform it, there's so many opportunities to do like different things, say different, you know, nuances with the emotion, but it's a really emotionally charged piece. And I talked to Joe, I was like, "Dude, I feel like you were going through something when you wrote this." And he was like, "Yeah, that was right after, I think it was his dad who passed away." And that was like, he poured himself into that piece. Like, I feel like the trombone world caught this great composer at the right time and said, "Just write us whatever you want." And it's an absolute treasure, I think, in the trombone world, just because it's, you know, we have a lot of pieces for us that it's like, hey, let's see how weird we can, you know, awkward we can make your listener feel with all these, you know, extended techniques. You know, and not a lot of them have like a lot of emotional connection to them, but they're just like fun pieces like Barnacle Bill, you know, but it's a rare find to get something that you can really like dive into emotionally and that has like those healing powers. Yeah, the Elegy would be my
Nick and I talk about that a lot, right? I mean, there's plenty of trombones have a long history of like, plenty of show off pieces just for you know, other trombonists, but we're capable of so much more, and it's so much more fulfilling when we do that.
Right.
And that's how you reach non-trombonists.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Is fifth position real? We haven't asked that one in a while.
It's
It's a conceptual question.
it's out there somewhere. It's like dark matter. We know it exists. We can't quite see it. No, it's out there somewhere. We know it's there.
Okay, that's a good answer. Do you have a concert experience that sticks out in your mind as just the most memorable, most meaningful?
Yeah, for me it was one of the more recent ones, and I feel like every season I have one, and every time I get this question it's going to be something from the last season. I feel like that's what's one of the beauty of our jobs, is that we get these opportunities to make these amazingly musical moments. Like, if you don't have one of these stories from each one of your seasons, then I wouldn't believe you. You know what I mean? Like, with the orchestras that three of us play with, it's like you're gonna get that. So for me, we were doing Shasti 7 with Spano, who Spano is one of those really emotional conductors. Like, I've literally seen him cry on the podium before while conducting us, and it's like it's powerful. When you have a leader that's willing to express themselves like that, it makes you feel like a safe space to express yourself like that. And I remember we were doing. I mean, we all know the history behind the Shostakovich Leningrad. And when Spano was conducting that, we had the Pittsburgh Symphony section come in. We had Jeff D, Jim Nova, and I think Nate called in Koichiro to fill in our section, because our sub at the time was Jason Robbins from Alabama, and he subbed in the section with Pittsburgh. And so for just having that, like a section that's like, like that plays together, that like, dude, they were crushing us. Like, they were keeping us on our toes, me and Nate, and it was, and Ko was second, which we all know how, like, Ko was second in the Met, so guy knows how to be a great second. Like, it was two great sections that we're sitting like sort of down the line. It was like this one massive trombone line, but it ended up with the principals next to each other and then went out. So I was literally like right in front of Spano. I was in the middle of the orchestra, and it was coming to the final culmination, climactic moment in the last movement, where, Nick, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, where it's like comes to this big moment and the bass trombone almost...
G-A-B.
Yes!
Oh, God.
Yes! God! Like, what fantastic writing. And, I mean, the bass trombone literally comes to the front as the leader of the orchestra at this moment, and Spano just looks at me, and he just starts smiling and then just looks straight up to the heavens and was conducting, and you just see him he's beaming. And I'm continuing to do this, but like, it was ethereal, man. It was out of body, that the whole orchestra just locked. And the sonorities we were making as such a large ensemble already, but with such amazing players in every section. I love every single one of my colleagues and what they can do. And it's just, I will never forget that moment where it was almost like time stood still. Ya-ba-bum, ba-ba-bum, bum. And you just see the sound and Spano's look gazing up to the heavens. And it was... like, I swear you could hear it outside the hall, the whole orchestra just locking, and it was amazing. I'll never forget that moment.
Man, I have goosebumps hearing that. That's an amazing. It's like it's easy to make fun of conductors, and we do it all the time. But like those moments when you connect with them, and when they're showing you that they're locking into what you're doing, and that you're on the same page, and that they're enjoying what you're doing, and there's no better feeling, right?
Yeah. And then when you play the composers that just know how to bring that out of an orchestra, like Rachmaninoff is another great example. I mean, I'm a little biased because my grandfather Shasti and Rock, but yeah, totally agree with you.
Oh man,
yeah, symphonic dances. That's such an awesome piece.
Yeah.
Is there a recording of that? What you guys did, Shasti?
I'd have to find that night, because we played it like 4 nights in a row, and so I can't remember which night that happened on, but I'll try and. Yes, there are recordings, and I've got it on my computer. Man. I'll find it.
I would love to hear that. I remember Jim telling me about going down to play that. He was so excited.
Man, there was a hang.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah, I think I did it in New York with the Philharmonic right before it was down in Atlanta, because I remember. Yeah. And the way we set up the second trombone section, I was playing in the second trombone section. We were right next to the timpani, so like it was like timpani, like right here. And every concert, I think we did it 4 times as well. And every concert, but you leave the concert, and your ears are ringing. But it's amazing. It's so much fun.
I'm playing, but I can't hear what notes I'm playing.
Exactly.
You just feel vibration.
Yeah.
All right, I have one more, and then Nick has one.
Yep.
You're standing in front of your 18-year-old self. What would you tell him?
Boo. A lot of things, man. A lot of things. Buckle up, like freaking. I don't know. If I'm talking about like practice techniques, I would say scales. Like, please just take your scales seriously, dude. That was one thing that I didn't really take seriously until like Navy band life, because my pitch just was not getting me where I wanted it to be in auditions and in performances. Like, I was always frustrated that there was like 1 or 2 notes out of tune every phrase. And I was like, well, how do these other guys do it? And it's like, just freaking scales. Like, find the song in a scale, fall in love with that song, and do it every day. And I feel like I wish I could tell that to myself. Other than that, I feel like I was told a lot of the right things when I needed to hear it. And so I would leave the rest to fate, because I'm happy where life has placed me.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, my question to you, this is one I like to ask all our guests, is what is something that you as a teacher believe students don't do enough of?
Being honest with themselves. Like, and I a little bit of a multi-part answer that I'll try to keep short, but one is, in order to be honest, you have to like have that mental vision of your goal. Like, what do you want? And like I said, growing up in Texas, everybody knew Charlie Vernon. And by proxy, I guess by proxy for us, it was, everybody knew Randy Hawes. And so these guys were the dream for me, are the dream for me still. And, first of all, having that as your goal, having something like that as your goal, but then being honest with yourself and like checking your ego at the door and saying like, I'm not there, but someday I will be. And these are the things I need to do to get there. And like being honest, just like being able to tell yourself, like, not in a deconstructive way, but like that needs to be better. My articulations are not good enough. My tone is not good enough. This is what my goals are. This is how I'm going to get there. But that honesty is where I find a lot of people fall short, and I can see it in a lot of students that I work with. That it's like, I kind of, in my back of my mind, I kind of tell myself like, if you don't fix this, you're not going to make it. And I'll never tell them that in those words. I'll try to, coach them in much kinder ways of getting that message across. But that, to me, I think is one of the biggest downfalls of people, is that it's like they're not willing to be honest with themselves and say like, this isn't good enough to win a job. This isn't good enough for me. To be able to tell yourself that, I think, is really one of the sort of pillars, the cornerstones of progress.
That's a great answer.
Great answer. Yeah, we're afraid.
Yeah,
we're afraid to like get out of the comfort zone, right? Of just like, it's like we're afraid to sound bad, or we're afraid to not tell ourselves we're good, so we self-sabotage and don't even try, so we don't have to risk like.
Well, it only gets harder as you get older, to try and record yourself. Like, now I'm in my 30s, I'm 35. The idea of recording myself is like, great, I'm going to hear something I've been working on for a decade now, and it's still not good enough. That it can really beat you down if you don't check your ego at the door. You don't like keep it out of the practice room. It can really inhibit your growth.
Absolutely. Something I talk a lot about with my students who have trouble with this is, the difficult process of separating the ego from the artistic self or the player, Yeah. And that's kind of that's what you're talking about is keeping those two things separate. Just because you're out of tune on a phrase doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
We take it personally.
Yeah. It's easy too. It's very personal. The process is personal.
Yeah.
The process is personal. I like that from Nick Schwartz.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Exactly.
We have lots of t-shirt
Maybe a
ideas.
halter top. Keep it sexy.
Well, Brian, we love you and we miss you.
I love
and
you guys.
I'm so glad that you hung out with us to ring in 2021, which is going to be a beautiful year of trombone playing and other things.
That's right.
The hang is going to be legit down at STS, or not STS. But,
it is STS though. ITF, STS.
Well, it's both. Yeah,
that's
it's
right.
both.
Yeah.
The Love Child.
It's gonna be a great hang.
We're gonna
I
just
can't
knock
wait.
on your door right beforehand. We're like with our sleeping bags and like, hey, we're here, ready to stay.
I'll have
Can we
Caddyshack
build
ready.
a fort?
So what are you guys doing down at ITF STS? Like, do y'all have like are you doing a class like or a presentation? Oh, wait, aren't you guys? You're doing the podcast down there, right?
We're doing a live podcast with Joe Alessi.
Awesome. And so we'll be able to sit in and
Yeah, so it'll be in one of the halls. I don't know which one, obviously.
How cool.
The big highlight for us as a team is the podcast, and it's going to be really fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited and looking forward to seeing it. And honestly, I've been following you guys for, even before Third Coast Retreat. We met. I think I was playing with Pittsburgh one time, and Jim had Sebastian. You came over, and Hakeem came over. Well, and also Sebastian, I've been hearing about you from John since I was in high school. I remember he was like, "Yeah, I've got this really good student, Sebastian, that you're probably gonna meet him at Allstate. You got to keep up." And so I've been, you guys have been doing such amazing things. It's just, it's an honor to be on this podcast with you guys. So
thanks.
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
we ran into in Pittsburgh. We ran into our friend Boots and Cats too. Do you remember seeing him?
Cats and boots and cats.
That is a long.
Boots and cats.
That guy's a party animal.
It would make no sense to try to explain that.
Brian Hecht has to be top 3 Brians for me in my life.
That's saying quite a lot because you have a lot of good Brians in your life.
Yeah, I have a cousin, Brian, who's a great guy. I really like him. And Brian Santero, our little buck. And of course, the handsome, dashing, coiffed hair, Brian Hecht.
Just so much handsome. But yeah, we grew up really close, like 15 minutes away, and had the same teacher growing up. And it seemed like lived kind of similar lives in a lot of ways. But it's kind of a special bond, when you have the same teacher in high school, in such a formative time of your life, middle school even, and you go on and actually are successful, and it's something you always have. And John Bowles is, he was like a second dad to me growing up. So it was really meaningful to get to talk to Brian about him a little bit.
Yeah, and I know of John Bowles. Number one, I guess the first time I heard about him was probably in some arrangement that he did for like trombone choir or trombone quartet or something like that. He has a decent amount of that, and we've done some of his arrangements at the trombone retreat. So that's probably the first time. But then I started, over my years in the business, meeting more and more people who studied with him, and I was like, man, how many people studied with this guy? So he's kind of one of those legendary, if not the legendary, Texas trombone teacher. It's for high school students. It's pretty remarkable. But I wonder how many Texans we're going to have on this show after all's said and done, whenever that is.
You have one on every show. That's all that matters.
Yep, that's true. What show am I referencing right now? Texas Forever.
Oh, Friday Night Lights, bro.
All right,
bro. Cool. We played them in high school. They were very good.
Yeah,
I'll just say that.
Was that Lubbock or
Odessa Permian? It was what they were based off. The show is based off of. Yeah. They had the same helmets, I think.
So that's Midland area, right?
Yeah. Those were their rivals. But I really enjoyed. I touched on it in the intro a little bit, but he was very open with. He's like, I'm a sensitive person. I really latch onto emotion, and I hear that in his playing. He's a sensitive player. He obviously works very hard, and I've always respected that about him. He's always putting himself out there. He's obviously been, his resume is a mile long of things he's already gotten to do. So there's no question there, but it's always nice when it's like there's a really good guy behind all that success.
Yeah, and another thing that I really appreciated with him is hearing his story. And it really wasn't a successful one until further along, until he was really in his second year of grad school. So, and that's by no means putting him down. It's quite the opposite. I really appreciate hearing people who are so successful have, trouble at the beginning, like us mere mortals, So, we've experienced that multiple times on this podcast. And I would say that's kind of one of the goals of this podcast is to, relate to our audience and our listeners that like, hey, these people who you idolize, like they have been where you are right now. And I think that really comes through with people like Brian who are willing to go there like he did and say, hey man, I kind of sucked for a little while, and, let's be fair. His version of sucking is, was probably pretty darn good. Let's be honest. But he wasn't always Brian Hecht. He wasn't always the bass from Atlanta and the guy who subs in a million orchestras.
His mom might disagree that he was always Brian Hecht, but
okay, all right.
No, but exactly what you're saying. Like, and I loved his answer to your question, which we typically ask on the podcast, because it was a very unique answer in that, you know, being honest with yourself and not being afraid to be honest with yourself, just not taking it personally. That's where real progress comes from, I believe, because it's like people getting excited about failures in a way, you know, because you learn so much from them. And those are the people that are successful. It's if you have this mindset that you only need to win every single thing you do and do well in every single audition, otherwise you're going to be a failure or you're not cut out for it, then you have the wrong mindset, because no one does that.
Well, and on top of that, if you put so much pressure on each individual event of your growth, you are bound to not do as well, because everything is under so much pressure that you could, you know, there could be too much nerves involved. You can buckle under that pressure. There's already enough pressure from certain situations like an audition, like recitals and stuff like that. We don't need to be putting that extra pressure on ourselves.
I have a question, Nick.
Shoot, straight from the hip.
Did Santa Claus visit you? How was your Christmas?
Santa was good this year. You know, I didn't expect much, but it was good. You know, I got a nice present from my wife, and more importantly, I got to give those who I love presents, and I think that's important. And we got to dress up our little dog with a bow tie because he is fancy. And
he's a gentleman.
He's a little gentleman, little hairy gentleman. Yeah, our tradition in the
little hairy gentleman.
Yes, our tradition in our apartment in New York. My wife is Serbian, Daniela Candelari. For those of you who have played some of her music, she's a composer, composer.
Very good one.
Yes, I'm biased, but I'm also that is realistically true. She is very good.
She is the talent in the relationship.
That's true. So normally we're going a million miles per hour when Christmas hits, and our tradition is Christmas Day, we don't get out of our pajamas and we watch as many Christmas movies as possible. So this year was a little different. We obviously weren't going a million miles per hour leading into Christmas, but we kept that tradition up, which was very nice. And my family has a traditional Christmas brunch, which was really good. And Sebastian, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did a portly gent slide down your chimney this year?
Well, he did. He did in a different way. My family decided to try something new this year. It was a really fun project. We all chose 3 charities and told the rest of our family the 3 charities that we chose. And everyone got to choose one for each person. And so that's all we did. We didn't exchange gifts. And because I don't know if you knew, but we're like such good people. We're like really good people.
What charities did you choose?
I chose, the one that I always support is Bloom Haiti.
Oh, yeah, you have a little history with Haiti, going down there and doing some work.
Yeah, it's this amazing foundation down there that basically works with young people in the music schools there. There's like little music schools in each town, and I mean, they need so many things. And first time I went down there to teach, I picked up a big bottle of like valve oil on the way to the airport. And it's like I gave them a kidney when I gave it to them. They like threw me a party, and just so many things. And money goes so far. And there's some just amazing people working down there. And Dave Bender's been down there too.
Yeah.
What else? And some local Pittsburgh charities for like hunger, and one national charity for basically using music therapy to work with children with certain disabilities. Yeah, but it was cool.
That's great.
Actually, yeah. And so Christmas was really nice. It's really nice, you know. Speaking of Christmas, we got one of the most thoughtful emails we've ever received, and I would love to share it with you. So let me read it. This is from Chris Larson, who is a tuba player.
Tuba is like a big euphonium, right?
I believe so.
So I mean, come on, like, pick a real instrument, guy. I'm just kidding.
Guy. You're going to feel bad after you hear this. So, dear Mr. Schwartz and Mr. Vera, my name is Chris Larson. I'm currently a freshman tuba player at Columbus State University, where I'm studying with Dr. Alex Avila. I'm also a member of the Cincinnati Brass Academy, which is an all-in brass studio where I study with Jonathan Tang. A few weeks ago, Jonathan recommended that I should listen to the Trombone Retreat podcast, so I popped onto Spotify and decided to give it a listen. I chose to listen to the episode where you interviewed Jim Markey, and it was amazing. After listening to that episode, I was hooked, and over the last few weeks, I've gone through and listened to every single episode you have made. 20 gold stars for you. I have really enjoyed listening to all of the really cool artists you have interviewed. You guys both ask such thoughtful questions that really highlight each of the artists on your show. I have also really enjoyed listening to the wonderful sense of humor that you guys both have, which has really resonated with me and given me quite a good laugh. Well, geez, that was very nice of you to say. Thank you.
Glad someone finds this funny.
I have a few questions that I would love to know your thoughts on, and I really like these questions. When both of you won your jobs, what was it like for both of you to adapt your playing and sound concept to fit within your respective orchestras? I know you guys will go and sub for other orchestras around you, so what do you do to match the particular sound of the orchestras you are playing with? Thank you for making such an entertaining and thoughtful podcast. I think this is such a wonderful resource that all musicians should listen to. I've definitely learned a lot from it. You guys are doing an excellent job, and I can't wait to see what the future has in store. Okay.
Ooh,
man.
What an email. That's very nice. Thank you.
Right?
Thank you, Chris. Go on playing the tuba. I permit it. Like you were looking for my permission. Oh, well, that's a great question. And I think, it's, you can get it, you can go kind of down a rabbit hole on that question as far as intonation and sound concept and, but really I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. So the biggest adjustment when I got into the New York City Ballet was I just didn't know ballet music very well. Plain and simple. And there's a certain style to ballet music, much like there is opera, which I know you'll get into, Sebastian. And so, you just have to kind of have big ears and listen and just try to adapt to the environment around you. And I think that's really the long and short of it is any ensemble you're playing in, be it your high school band or your college orchestra or brass quintet, really, we should be trying to adapt to the people around us so that we are fitting in the ensemble. And, a key goal of being a musician is flexibility, is not being the person who is maybe not even intentionally, but being stubborn, coming across as stubborn because they're inflexible, immovable. So the biggest thing, if I could boil it all down, listening. Just listen to those around you and make it a goal to make the people around you sound good. Not like, oh, I'm going to highlight myself. It's like what you're doing supports the people around you and makes them sound good. Because if they sound good, they're going to like you because you have helped them sound good, especially in a supporting role like bass trombone or tuba. Our job is to make the people above us sound good.
But you're principal bass trombone.
Well,
so they should make you sound good, right?
I just so happen to sound good, but just kidding. So
no, I think that's you're nailing it, especially with that second question. And to speak to a little bit more objectively on the first question, you asked how to adapt your playing and sound concept to fit within your respective orchestras. So, I studied with John Kitzman in Dallas, but then I went and studied in New York, and I studied with Finlayson and Markey, and just the New York sound in general tends to be a little darker, full, and moving to Pittsburgh, there's every city has its own playing tradition. Every orchestra has its own playing tradition. Every orchestra kind of adapts to their hall, and the way they play kind of adapts there. They adapt to the history of conductors they've had, the history of players they've had. So you have to understand that anywhere you sub, anywhere you go is going to have its own unique style. And there's not one right way to play, in my opinion. And so when I moved to Pittsburgh, there's a history in Pittsburgh of a lot of color in the sound, a lot of overtones, a lot of heroic playing, a lot of brilliance. And so my sound was kind of too dark sometimes when I first started. So I had to adjust equipment. I had to adjust just concepts in my mind to be able to resonate and cut within the orchestra. And I think that's just part of what you do in adapting. There's always an adjustment period. Every person that's joined an orchestra will tell you it's like you don't hit the ground running on day one. There's adjustments to wherever group you play in based on, how loud they play and what kind of role the trombones typically have in the orchestra. I find it fascinating. Like, you go listen to the Cleveland Orchestra, they play in Severance Hall. It's it's a small, really, really live space. And so the trombones play a little darker, a little more with more width. So the string balance can be correct. And it's just fascinating. The New York Philharmonic plays in a very big hall. And so they adapt their playing to that. And so I think it's just really cool to learn about the histories like that. And so when you sub, it's the same kind of thing. Just like Nick was saying, I think you have to have big ears and realize it's your job to make everyone around you sound better. And that's what's going to get you more work. Knowing your role. If you're subbing in a section position, don't be someone that people have to worry about, you know?
Yeah, and a big one I know for principal trombonists, and you know, generally speaking, I've talked to even bass trombonists about this that tend to do this too much. Moving. Some people are okay with it, but especially on second trombone, there's something about that. When a second trombonist moves too much, it can really bother the people around them, especially the principal trombonist. And so, you know, err on the side of, you know, you don't want to be stiff. You don't want to be, you know, like in a box the whole time, but you know, you shouldn't be leading from the middle chair. And this obviously doesn't apply to you, Chris, with playing the tuba, but you know, don't be over there like churning butter, stirring, like moving around all the time like you're dancing a tango. So, not saying you do that. I don't know how you play, but you know, these are just little things that can make a big difference. And it's like, just try to be a good citizen of the orchestra, you know?
If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving us a rating and review on iTunes, as it helps us out a lot. If you want to leave a question or topic for us to discuss, we'll talk about it on the podcast. Follow us at Trombone Retreat on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on our YouTube channel. You can also email us at our website, tromboneretreat.com, as we love hearing from you. You can also follow Nick at basstrombone444 and myself at js.vera on Instagram. And as always,
Retreat
yourself for 2021.
Pew, pew, pew.
That was not an actual air horn sound.